Hello and welcome back to Building HVAC Science. In today's episode, really a heartfelt episode, Eric and I meet and speak with Manly Arnason. We've met him on social media before, but we've never met him in person or on video as we did in our conversation today in the podcast. He's an HVAC business owner from Brandon, Manitoba, Canada, and he shares a journey of transformation from a challenging past, as he describes it, to becoming a dedicated tradesperson with a mission to bring integrity and quality to the HVAC industry. He talks a lot about running a small business and opens up to the challenges of implementing proper practices in the trades, how important it is for continuous education and the role of community in fostering growth and excellence. We talk about some of the unique challenges working in the Canadian climate, and especially the climate of Manitoba, and the significance of the national apprenticeship programs which are present there, and the value of building a like-minded community to support others striving to improve their craft. We give links in the show notes to his business website, as well as his business Facebook, and he even asked us to share his email. So let's get into this conversation with Manly Arnason, talking about building integrity in the trades, a Canadian contractor's journey.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Building HVAC Science Podcast. Eric Kaiser here, Bill Spohn, somewhere over there. We've got a special guest today that reached out to us and wanted to come on the show and share a little bit about himself and his life and his story in the trades. Manly Arnason, all the way from Brandon, Manitoba. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, guys. And that is Canada, by the way. If any of your American listeners remember where Canada is, it's north of North Dakota. So just to put myself on the map.
I think that's who we always blame when it gets cold down here. I'm convinced you have moose and geese that stand on the border and just blow cold air south for us.
Yes, many pieces of wildlife are all sending this cold front down your way, and because we don't want it. I looked for your American listeners. I did look at what the temperature was here on Monday morning, and that's minus 22 Fahrenheit, which was minus 30 Celsius. So that's a typical January in Manitoba here. So
that's a little chillier than I like to have it. It was -1 here last night, Fahrenheit.
And that's toque and mitts weather for you guys, I'm sure. So,
yeah, toque and mitts weather, or hat and gloves for those of us who don't understand toque and mitts.
Yes.
All kinds of vocabulary here. We're talking today because you responded, you reached out, you listened to a couple of our podcasts. One was Second Chance University, and you just mentioned you listened to Jason Julian's podcast, and you felt like you have your path in life and in the trade story to share, and so people don't feel isolated. There's a lot of similarities, and you made some commitments and made some changes. And we really don't even know this. Eric and I don't know this. So this is like we're going to this cold. You're just going to tell us what makes up Manly.
Well, I feel there's a tremendous trust here because when you invite somebody on to talk, like you never really know what they're going to say. But to start all off, thanks, guys, for allowing me to be here and be a part of this group. Sometimes I don't feel worthy because I've listened to many of your guys' podcasts and followed you guys for a while, and I've seen some of the guests that you've had on and seen the knowledge or listened to the knowledge, and I just heard some of the depth of some of the people and what they know and what they can do. And myself, just a brief history on where I am currently. My wife and I own a small plumbing and HVAC company up here in Manitoba. We have 6 of us that are on the install and service team, plus that includes our 2 electricians. And we have a couple of other fine ladies that includes my wife in the office staff, which I'm very glad about. It's just this whole journey of learning is something that I would want to share with your listeners because I've really been impacted since I started tuning into these things, and it was a fluke how it happened. I might get into this here as we go along, but I was in my refrigeration class one day and our instructor said something about just other media that you could tune into that was HVAC related for extracurricular learning and so on and so forth. And he was the one that mentioned about, it was Brian's HVAC school that I was first introduced to. And I was like, I've never listened to anything. I don't even know if I can remember if I ever listened to a podcast before that. It just wasn't something I had ever I knew they existed, but it wasn't of any interest of mine. I looked into it. So it was Brian and his crew that got me hooked on the podcast. And then variety is the spice of life. So I thought, well, I'm just going to do a different just to see if there's anything else out there. So I just stumbled upon this Building HVAC Science Podcast, and I started listening to you guys, and I was just like, wow, there are so many people out there that want to do good work, that want to make this industry better, not only on the trade side, but the building side, and how you guys are bringing those two, I don't know what you want to call them, associations together, or however you want to word it, but they're bridging that gap. Because I know with my own experience, I've worked construction, I've worked service, I've done everything as far as that goes, but I really got to have this desire on the science side, the building science side, to understand that whole HVAC part of what we're doing, the heating side, the ventilation, and the air conditioning. Quite a while ago, I went and took what we have in Canada here is HRAI, the Heating, Refrigeration, Air Conditioning Institute of Canada. They have several courses available for guys like myself that want to upgrade heat loss, heat gain, mechanical ventilation, those kind of courses. And it really opened up my eyes to what we can learn if we're willing to just have our eyes and ears open to learn more instead of being stuck where you're at. So that was awesome.
Do you find any of these things that you learn challenging to implement? You are the owner of the company, but you have to bring people along and maybe lead by example. How does that get accomplished?
This is why I wanted to come on here, Bill, because I can imagine for the thousands and thousands of contractors and business owners and your listening audience, it's one thing to go and get education, but it's another thing to put it into practice. And I've reached out to some of the other guys in the HVAC realm that are like the YouTubers, and I've sent messages and say, look, I'm stuck. I know what we need to do, and I know how we need to do it better, but I just feel stuck because the day-to-day, the grind, just managing your company, just keeping everything afloat and trying to implement these things, which are so difficult for us that have small businesses as well as large, but so hard to implement those things. So that's part of what I wanted to share, is that we can do it if we join together and find solutions to these problems. So
have you found a community then that's helped you to learn and grow and move forward with that in your business then?
See, that's the problem here. So that's why I was like looking out there to see if there's anybody available for, if you have a question about design work or something like that. And same thing, like it's very hard to run a small service company with install work and then do design work. And you've heard many of your guests in the past talk about the challenges that presents. And I'm in the same boat here. So what I want to share with everybody is that if you're like me and a lot of others, we want to make this community, this platform like you guys have started, make it larger, make it more readily accessible for us that want to do good work so we can help each other out, get connected more. Because it's getting connected part is the big challenge. But once we're connected and we get to know each other, I think it drives our passion to help each other out.
We have something in the works called Better HVAC that's going to relaunch in February that is going to help to provide that connection, contractor to contractor, and eventually customer to contractor, people that are like-minded. We heard that in the last podcast recorded, Eric, just a few minutes ago, and we're hearing it on this one again, and it's really thrilling to say that we're providing a platform for community. Part of it. There's so much community going on out there, and a big credit to HVAC School and Brian Orr for kickstarting it in our industry. Oh, I got to say that. So what's your backstory in terms of working in the field? I'm on your website. I see you started the company in 2008. What happened before 2008? Because you don't look that young. No, sorry.
Thank you very much. I'm willing to jab back and forth. So if you're on board with that, then I'm
on.
That. Yes, good. Let's get ready to rumble. But anyways, so before that, as a lot of the tradespeople that you've had on your podcast have explained, they grew up in a business. My father was a plumber. We came from a small town in Manitoba here. I would say you're anywhere between 700 to 1,000 people. That involved doing what we call rural work, septic tanks, water softening, water distribution, pumps, and all that other jazz that goes along with that. But then I met a gorgeous blonde lady and started dating her, and she lived in the city where I now live. And we decided to get married, and that lady is so intelligent. And I said to her, how could somebody so smart marry somebody like me? But there we go. We got married in 2003. So I had been a plumber and was just finishing off my apprenticeship when I moved to this city of now 50,000 people. And when I moved here, that was basically my first experience with HVAC. And there's a lot to this, but the service guy who was doing all the service calls first took me to an air conditioner, which I knew nothing about other than they made noise and cooled your home. And he hooked on his gauges and we had a look at it together, and I was fascinated. And that was basically how my journey began in this. And then I moved over to another company not too long after that and started doing sheet metal work. And I was just like, this is awesome. Fabricating and assembling and making stuff out of nothing. That was my beginnings in HVAC. And since then, no disrespect to plumbers out there, but I fell in love the way heat moves and the way air moves and ventilation, and just awesome. So that's how I got my start.
Yeah, you mentioned minus 22 Fahrenheit on Monday was the temperature there. So the performance in the wintertime especially has got to really affect the performance of the homes and the buildings, has to affect how you do your work. What's the makeup of the housing? What's the housing stock there? And how does that factor into the work you do?
In our province here, mostly what you'll see is wood frame construction. For sticking with residential, you will likely see from about 2000 on what we call a pony wall, concrete wall, and then like a 4-foot wall in the basement of wood. And then the rest of it would be wood frame construction. Your typical insulation values would be your R20s in the walls, and 50, I believe now, is the code rule for attics. It's all developed around our climate. So if we talk about HRAI and we go into their manual, you can see design conditions and you can see where central Canada is placed, and it has its own set of rules, trust me. So your insulating values are quite a bit higher here and more required than what you see in other parts of our country. So
what kind of insulation are you using in those climates? Is it still mostly fiberglass or rock wool, foam, a little bit of everything?
Yeah, you'll see a mixture of everything. I did work on a few projects that had spray foam. The whole building was done in spray foam, top to bottom, but for the most part, it's still wood stud and bad insulation.
Does that cause any problems with the greater heat differential? At least in my environment, you've got a lot colder outdoor temperature than in the environment I'm in. Does that cause any big issues with the fiberglass in there and condensation or anything like that?
I think it's like with anything, as long as it's done correctly, then your issues should be little to none. But we do have inspections on vapor barriers to make sure everything's sealed and whatnot. But it all comes down, like everything, it comes down to the contractor to make sure they're following code and installing as per regulations and rules, city bylaws and everything. All the enforcements come into that.
And that's a little bit different up there. I'm understanding that in the U.S., I haven't done much in Canada. Is that all done through the provincial governments, or is there actually local inspectors then?
Yeah, our city is fairly large, so we have local authorities here, and they use the National Building Code of Canada for the most part, but there might be certain amendments or additions to the city as far as clearances and so on and so forth. But as far as building practices, it's all the National Building Code of Canada.
That's a little bit different. We tend to not have necessarily national codes. Our states get to adopt the codes that they want to adopt, and even local jurisdictions. So a little bit different there, but we still get amendments and things even to those.
Yeah, it's the same here. There are amendments in our codes, plumbing codes, HVAC. There's amendments, Canadian amendments and provincial amendments. So
interesting. You mentioned something that's a little bit different in the way the U.S. does things and Canada does things. And you have a national apprenticeship program that you have to go through to actually get certified to do HVAC. And I'm guessing plumbing as well?
Yeah. So what we have here, and I've been in the U.S. quite a bit, and I've heard the referral as, well, we use the trade plumbing, for example. I've heard of a master plumber. But here in Manitoba, we refer to them as a journey person. So you would achieve what we call a red seal It's a interprovincial license, so whether I work in British Columbia or Manitoba or Nova Scotia, I'm legally able to work anywhere in Canada with that license. Now, with my refrigeration license, I have a residential refrigeration ticket, but it's only good for the province of Manitoba. So I couldn't go and install an air conditioner in, say, Saskatchewan, which is the neighbor to the west of us, without updating my license. So I would have to get a certification for that province. Now, if I was a Red Seal refrigeration mechanic, then I would be able to do anything anywhere in Canada. So sheet metal has a Red Seal, all our related trades, pipe fitter, sprinkler fitter, and now gas fitter as well. Gas fitter's Red Seal trade in Canada.
So once you hit that red seal, you can go coast to coast and anywhere and do the work in the country.
Anywhere. Yep. Bit different.
So smaller businesses like yours, from what I can gather in social media and other places, is that they have some typical challenges. And maybe you could share if those challenges are coincident with yours and maybe how you overcome them or manage or deal with them. And the three I think of immediately are personnel and hiring, marketing, and also pricing. Those are the three things that seem to come up. You're smiling. Did I hit a soft or hard button there? Or?
No, I think it's a challenge with any small to medium-sized business nowadays. I'm just finding, like I told you earlier about being stuck, when you want to do good work, guys, and you know how long it takes to do a job, and commissioning is a big part of who I am as far as a contractor goes. I've never been a love them or leave them. Yes, I've never been one of those contractors, but it takes time to do this. And one of the greatest advantages of commissioning a system properly is 2 or 3 years down the road, there's not going to be any complaints as far as the installation goes. But when you're racing to the bottom of the barrel to try and just get a job so you can feed your family, you have to do what you have to do to get the work. But what I've tried to do is sometimes, yes, you have to bid the job low, but still take the extra time, do the job right. You owe it to your customer to do the job right. If they wanted it done wrong, they would have done it themselves because they're not contractors, they're not gas fitters, they're not plumbers, they're not HVAC technicians. If they wanted it done improperly, they would have done it themselves on a Saturday afternoon. But they're putting their confidence and their faith in us to have the job done right. And even if sometimes maybe you're not as profitable, do the job right the first time. You owe it to your client. And if you can't do it, then you might have to maybe move on to other things. But our prerogative on every job is to make sure that that installation is done correctly. It's done to the manufacturer's specifications. It meets any code requirements, and it's commissioned. That way, the customer gets what they're paying for.
Do you find that that has created a reputation for your business?
Yeah.
I didn't say good one.
No, but it does. Even in a town of this size, Bill, it doesn't take long for word to get around. If there's anything that keeps me going day to day is people phone up and say, Manly, your guys were just excellent. You came and you did the job. You didn't leave a mess. You cleaned up after yourself. The furnace is working properly and your staff are super nice to deal with. They were kind to my dog. They just did a wonderful job. And if you even use our company, for example, if you read some of the reviews, they speak about our honesty, our integrity, because I wanted to talk about my own life, but there was changes that had to happen in my life before I could have those viewpoints. What I've learned in my own personal life, I want, and I have for the last 17 years applied it to my business life, is to, the golden rule says to treat others the way you'd want to be treated. That's exactly what I want to do for our clients.
So did you want to get into the personal?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Going back into my earlier years, my father was a plumber, but a very honest man. He raised me, told me what was right, what was wrong, and he lived it. But as a lot of us in our teen years, especially in small communities, we get involved in the wrong things in the wrong crowd. And I chose to make some poor decisions and live quite a few years of my life recklessly. I did a lot of things that I regret and I've had to pay a price for. But what I did find was grace and mercy. And I was forgiven of all those things. And I had to determine to not let my past determine my future. I had a personal choice to make every day of what my day was going to be and how I was going to live it. So I decided to live honestly, I decided to be a law-abiding citizen and make something of myself. My grandmother said to me one time in my former days, she says, "Manly, are you ever going to make anything of yourself?" And I still remember those words. But yet, after that, I continued to do what I did. But in 1999, I decided to have a life change. And since April of 1999, I've been a different man. I have a new perspective on living. I have a new perspective of life and others around me. And since then, it's been my goal or mission to not only change my own life, but try and affect others. And any influence, anything I can do to help anybody else is definitely a prerogative of mine. And I mean that with all of my heart. That's why I'm here today. That's what I want to share with people, is that there are people out there that still want to make life better, not only in our trade, but in our personal life too. And if I can be of some help in some way, I definitely want to do that.
It's really awesome. What does the future look like? The near future for your business? Is it things stable?
Yeah, I would say when you have enough customers, you just roll day to day. In smaller communities, growth is a bit difficult. In our community, it is very easy to just start a business and get a truck on the road and hire a couple people and just go to town and work away. But you really have to have a growth mindset in your company if you're going to achieve those goals. But you're only as good as the people that you can bring on board. And if they're not sharing the same goals and the same mission that you are, then it's very difficult, because in the past, I have had people in our company that maybe didn't share my same convictions. And it's very hard to grow a business in that way without everybody being on the same page. I do appreciate what this community does, the building science community and the HVAC community, of getting everybody on the same page and helping each other out with each other's struggles. It's what we need. It's like therapy some days.
Yeah. Any hints or suggestions on techniques you've used to bring the right people on board and get them on the same page? Things you do on a regular basis or in a hiring mode?
Yeah, I've been fortunate that now in our company, the people that we have employed, they're just the salt of the earth people. They want to come in, they want to do good work just like we do. They're honest, they're fair with us as the employer, and they want to treat the customer the same way as they want to be treated, like I said. So that's really a big hurdle to jump through, is having your staff being like-minded like you, because ultimately it comes down to me. I'm the CEO. I have to lead by example. And yeah, so I'm very blessed. To put it lightly, I'm very blessed. So I'm very glad. But as far as bringing in new people and whatnot, we just look for the opportunities if they arise. And sometimes people come across our doorsteps, and other times we have to put out ads and so on and so forth. But it's just the day in and day out, just trying to do our best.
So are you the screener for the hiring process? Do you ask the right questions or look at the background, or how do you do it? Where's the X-ray vision come?
Yeah, with obviously you've had a company for a long time too. And Eric, you've been involved in this too. A resume is just a piece of paper. It's basically, if you have a good feeling, you bring people on and hopefully they work out, because anybody can make up a story, but they say the old saying was proof in the pudding sort of thing. It's just one of those that you just have to give them a try and see how it works out. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't.
You mentioned, like in our company, we do try to do situational questions in an interview.
Oh, interesting.
It's like, here, set something up. Here's a situation with customer, client, whatever. How would you handle it? And then just let them freeform an answer. And it isn't a yes or no answer. It's got to have some detail behind it and some thought. And then you begin to see about the alignment with your principles. So we found those very helpful situational questions.
Interesting. Yep. Yeah. I've never given that any thought, but we can all learn from each other. So that's awesome. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Looks like Eric's got a question on his tip of his tongue.
Oh, sure.
You mentioned doing a lot of commissioning in your business, and I'm curious as to what your process is for that. And if you've always done that, is that something that has really helped your business grow, or is that something you've just always done in the business?
I've tried to just do what I knew was the best thing to do. In order for me to get better, I have to educate myself. So going back to my career change, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
In 2017, I'll reverse back to the day we started our company in 2008, January, 17 years this month. But I knew that in Manitoba, you had to be either an apprentice or a journey person in the refrigeration trade to work even on air conditioners. So I was able to have another journey person assign me as an apprentice. So I went on and on for the next 9 years. And I received a call from the lady from apprenticeship, and she said, Manly, you haven't been to school. We need you to either go to school and get this done or basically leave the trade. So when you own a business, and the technical college which I had to attend is in our largest city, which is 2 hours from where I live, it was a sacrifice. I had to make the sacrifice, but like I told you, I feel that I owe it to my clients to do the best that I can do. So I went back to school in my 40s, early 40s, and these levels in order for me to receive just to install air conditioners. That's basically all this license allows me to do. But I have a passion, and I care about my customers, and I care about these people so much that not only was because it's a sacrifice for your family too. And if anybody else is listening and you're on the verge of taking more training and you think it's going to be more pain than it's worth, I'm going to say no. The old saying, short-term pain, long-term gain, really is applicable in this situation. Yes, I had to spend time away from my family. Yes, I had to make sacrifices, and they had to too. But if you're going to do your best, you need to get all your certifications. You need to get your training. See, in our community, there's a lot of quote-unquote tradespeople working on air conditioning refrigeration systems that don't have licenses. And I determined not to be one of those people. If I'm going to do a job, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. I'm going to do what's right, because that's what we need to do as technicians. We need to have our certifications. We need to have all the tools available to us. Going back to your question about commissioning, I didn't really know anything about commissioning. I didn't. I just maybe a temperature rise, because I learned that in gas class. But other than that, I never really did anything. I never measured gas pressure. I didn't know anything much about airflow. But the real turning point, I think, in my career, on top of going back and taking refrigeration, was Brian and his podcast, and just listening to guys like yourself and others in this industry that say, this is very important, like ABC. That's the first time I ever heard airflow before charge. Wow, it opened my eyes. Then I began to do some studying and doing some research. And it was last year, that was my first time I ever got to go to the HVAC symposium in Florida. So I annoyed the guys, the TrueFlow Grid guys. If Chris probably remembers me coming by the booth, I was asking all these questions, and Steve was there. How am I going to get this thing to Canada, and so on and so forth? I was amazed at this tool, because using it for commissioning and using it for troubleshooting was unheard of for me. So I'm like, I have to get this thing. So I got home, and through the generosity of people sharing knowledge and information with me, I was able to purchase this product from TrueTech Tools. So thank you for that.
Good.
So commissioning, I didn't know. And what you don't know, you don't know. It was all done out of ignorance. I just didn't know. But now that I know to do good, I'm going to do good. And if anybody out there that's struggling with those decisions, just do what's right. And it'll pay for itself. Trust me.
I think that's a good place to wrap up our conversation. Trust Manly. It's the manly thing to do.
Yes, the manly way or the highway. It was my life change. It was the decisions in my life to do better with my own life that causes me to want to do better in my trade and to improve my skill set, and not be like the status quo and just get the job done and move on to the next one. I feel our industry deserves better, and I feel humanity deserves better. And if anything that I can do to make it better for somebody, then that's what I want to do. So I want to thank you guys for your time and being able to come on here and just share a few thoughts and some of my mistakes and some of my accomplishments. And I just hope it inspires somebody to do better, because that's why I'm here. I listened to your guys' 200th episode. I actually sent a message to Brian, because I was, and I mean this with all my heart, I was in tears. I was just listening to you guys and the difference you're making in our lives. Maybe you realize, but maybe you don't, but there's probably lots of other guys like me and ladies that just, they want to do what's right, and we just need the tools, and we need the knowledge, and we need the platform to say we're on board with this. And if there's anything I can do for anybody out there, reach out to me anytime. I am very passionate about this. So
I'll put your business website in the show notes. Should people just look for you in the different groups in Facebook? Is that the best way to communicate, or how do you want to go about that?
yeah, usually Facebook, email too, but I'm okay with putting out my cell number there too. If somebody wants to shoot me a text, I have no problem doing that whatsoever. I'm all for learning, and I'm all for building relationships with others that are struggling like me. And there's a few other people I follow on social media, and I'm always just trying to encourage them, say, good job, appreciate what you do, because we're never going to make the world a better place without supporting one another. So that's what I want to do.
That's right. It's a community.
Yep.
Thank you very much for offering to come on and for the conversation. I think it was very heartfelt, very meaningful. Hopefully listeners see some alignment with where you're coming from and where you're going to. Appreciate it, Manly.
Yes, me too. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Manly.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Building HVAC Science Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please consider doing so. There's a lot of other great trade-related resources and influences out there, including the HVAC Grapevine, HomeDiagnosis.tv, AC Service Tech, MeasureQuick, HVA Chicks, the Misfits of HVAC, HVAC Our School, HVAC Shop Talk, Stephen Reardon, HVAC Reefer Guy, Tool Pros, Service Business Mastery, Quality HVAC, HVAC Overtime, and HVAC Our Videos. We publish on a lot of different locations: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, a podcast page that we have, Pandora, Amazon Music, Player FM, Odyssey, iHeartRadio, and even Samsung. I also host the Res Talk podcast, where you can learn more about the rapidly expanding world of home energy ratings and the peripheral topics. You'll find that by searching any podcast app for Res Talk, RESTALK. I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Building HVAC Science Podcast, and we hope you learned some things about Manly Arnason and building integrity in the trades, his personal Canadian contractor's journey. Thanks again. Until next time, take care.